Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 28th, 2020 school committee meeting. These meetings are video and audio recorded. As a preliminary matter, this is Ryan McMahon, the chair of the Tyngsborough School Committee. Allow me to confirm that all school committee members and school personnel are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Tony Tenorella.
Affirmative.
Paul Mitchell.
Affirmative.
Julie Gastucci. Mike Moran.
Affirmative.
Rob Mullen. Rebecca Stanton.
Affirmative.
Thank you. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Dr. Flanagan.
Yes.
Dr. Branco.
Yes.
Mr. Messina.
Here.
Ms. Fairbanks.
Yes.
And student rep KJ Moore will not be with us tonight. Okay. This open meeting of Tyngsborough School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of April 28th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's orders suspend the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Tyngsborough School Committee is convening by Zoom as posted on the town's website, which identifies how the public may join. For Zoom meetings, please note that this meeting is being recorded and possibly aired live, and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that people may be able to see you, and that take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. If anyone has a comment or question, it can be submitted in the chat window and will be recognized by myself. If you are calling in on the phone, please press *9 to raise your hand, and when appropriate, you will be unmuted and asked to speak. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Members, when I call your name, please respond to the affirmative. Tony Tenorella.
Affirmative.
Paul Mitchell. Paul.
Affirmative.
Thank you. Julie Gastucci. All right, she can join us. Mike Moran.
Affirmative.
Rebecca Stanton.
Affirmative.
Thank you. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Dr. Flanagan.
Yes, thanks.
Dr. Branco.
Yes.
Mr. Messina,
Affirmative.
and Ms. Fairbanks.
Affirmative.
Thank you. Approval of minutes. I'm seeking a motion to approve the following school committee minutes. I will seek a motion to approve the minutes of April 7th, 2020.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Paul.
Seconded.
Thank you, Tony. Any discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Tenerella,
Affirmative.
Mr. Mitchell,
Affirmative.
Mr. Moran,
Aye.
and Ms. Stanton.
In favor.
That carries 5-0-0. Public hearing on the proposed FY21 school budget. I will seek a motion to suspend the regular meeting and open the public hearing on the FY21 budget.
Make that motion.
That was Mike Moran.
Yes.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I will second it.
Thank you,
Second.
Tony. Thank you, Tony. Any discussion? So require a roll call vote. Mr. Tenerella,
In favor.
Mr. Mitchell,
Favor.
Mr. Moran,
In favor.
Ms. Stanton.
In favor.
That carries 5-0. Dr. Flanagan and Mr. Messina will provide an overview of the budget, and then we'll open discussion up to any comments or questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to provide a brief overview of the budget and not even necessarily the budget right now. I'd like to provide a brief overview of where we are financially. We fully recognize that we're in the middle of a pandemic right now. We recognize that the economy is not the strongest as it potentially has been, clearly as it has been. This budget right now represents the work that we've done from November to March to present a fiscally responsible, full-time equivalency neutral budget to the community. It is a starting point for us. We believe that we'll be meeting with the Board of Selectmen and FinCom at some point in the near future once the dust settles a little bit and we understand what the financial impact of the coronavirus will be on the community. But as a jumping off point, this is the public hearing for this budget. At this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Messina to talk about some of the key points of the budget, and then we'll be happy to answer any public questions.
Thank you, Dr. Flanagan. As the superintendent mentioned, this is a FTE neutral, full-time equivalency neutral budget. There was, as indicated in our presentations, 4 positions that the schools identified as needed positions to move forward. We countered that with 4 reductions to make it neutral in terms of headcount. It brings in the current known tuitions for out of district, current known costs for utilities, busing, as well as any other additional costs. It's been the budget we've all seen since January. At this point, the 2-page is up on Dr. Branco's screen that he's sharing. We can open it up for any questions before we vote on this as a committee later in the meeting.
Thank you, Joe. Anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chair, may I be recognized?
Yes, Mr. Mitchell.
Yes, I'm not in favor of approving this budget at this time. I feel it doesn't recognize anything that has happened since March, as been discussed. There may be an opportunity where other funds may be available. It may be, most likely, we're going to be have restrictions in the budget, and I'm not in favor of approving it at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Hear your concerns loud and clear. It's definitely very uncertain times with the finances. If we do move forward approving the budget as is, we have the ability to back down off the numbers prior to town meeting. I'm in favor of the budget and moving forward at this point. Does anybody else have any other comments?
My last comment would be that if there is a program that's developed between now and when the town meeting is, which it has to be approved by town, that offers us more money, which I find highly unlikely, we may be restricting ourselves also. So that's my only other comment. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't see if anybody else is asking to speak. So if anybody has any questions, please use chat.
There are no comments in the chat or no questions in the chat.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may, this is Tony.
Yes, Tony.
Yes, the budget that we're presenting this evening is $2,000 for rollover. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, Mr. Tenero, that's
Dr.
correct.
Flanagan?
The budget recommends $2,000 above contractual salary rollovers.
And there's nothing initial budget acceptance, so we could always reduce it if we needed to before or at the tri-board meeting, if need be.
Correct.
So this is really just putting a number in place at this time until we know more information coming from either the state or the town.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
There's no more comments. I guess we will exit the public hearing portion of the meeting. Do we need a vote to do that, Mike?
You do. You need to adjourn the public hearing and come back to regular session.
Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
Make that motion. It's Mike Moran.
Thank you, Mike.
I'll second.
Thank you, Paul. So require a roll call vote. Mr. Tenorella,
Favor?
Mr. Mitchell,
In favor?
Mr. Moran,
In favor.
Ms. Stanton,
In favor.
carries 500. We will resume our normal meeting. Correspondence.
Thank you, Mr.
Flanagan?
Chair. Two items of correspondence in your drive tonight. One is an email that was sent to the Board of Selectmen and Town Administrator requesting approval to place a banner on both sides of Tyngsborough Bridge to support and recognize the class of 2020 and really get the community to see that we are very proud of those students. So that we'd also like to say that that meeting happened last night, and I'd like to thank the Board of Selectmen as well as the town administration for supporting this fully. Mr. Ogden was there last night presenting the concept, and I believe that there may be even approval to have it end up, this banner end up digitally on the billboard on Route 3. So that's great for those kids as well. So so thank you for that. The other piece of correspondence that you find in your drive tonight, I'm just going to allude to, and Dr. Branco is going to talk about it a little bit later. There was a comprehensive study done by the Teaching Systems Lab at MIT, and it really looked at remote learning plans of every state in the country. And I know Dr. Branco is going to dive into that in a little bit, but that's in your drive for your review as well. And that's all we have for correspondence.
Thank you, Dr. Flanagan. Visitors, comments, and questions?
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Yes.
Are we supposed to vote on the budget? I know we voted to come out of the meeting. Do we need to vote?
It's item 9. Item 9, we'll vote on it.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Morris, thank you. I'm looking at the chat. I don't see anybody for visitors, comments, and questions. Seeing none, we will move on. Where are we? Share the success. KJ Moore is not with us this time. He'll catch up at the next meeting. School committee update, subcommittee update. We don't have any at this time. Personnel.
So, Mr. Chair, we have a couple notifications of personnel. Marla Fisher will be hired permanently right now. She's been in the district this past year for Leah Messier, who was on leave. Leah has decided that she will not return to the district in a full-time capacity, so we're excited to welcome Marla Fisher to the district for next year. Congratulations and thank you to Cindy McGarian, who will be retiring effective Thursday. It'll be her last day. She's been a long-time paraprofessional, former special education teacher in the district. So I'd like to thank Mrs. McGarry for her hard work. Also, we have a resignation. Shayla O'Brien, sixth grade teacher at TMS, is leaving us after 8 years. She's accepted a position in Melrose, which is closer to her home near Boston. So those are the only personnel matters we have right now.
Excellent. Thank you. Unfinished business, FY21 budget. I will seek a motion to approve the total fiscal year 21 operating budget of $23,852,733, which includes a school committee budget of $21,213,900. Can I get a motion?
Chair, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Tony.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mike. Discussion? This will require a roll call vote. Mr. Tenorella,
In favor?
Mr. Mitchell,
Not in favor.
I'm sorry, you broke.
No.
No, thank you. Ms. Costucci,
Julia muted.
Julia muted.
In favor?
Thank you. Mr. Moran,
In favor.
thank you. Ms. Stanton,
In favor?
thank you. That carries 510. New business. Social Studies Curriculum Adoption Overview. Dr. Branco?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the district is wrapping up their 2-year history social science curriculum review. So in your drive, you can see the history social science curriculum overview, and that document provides the rationale and the action steps that we have followed over the past 2 years. This year, we have been in pilot mode. So K-12, we have reviewed 7 different programs and products over the past school year. The elementary school has piloted 3 products, with the 3rd grade piloting a unique focus on Massachusetts only, because that's the way the state frameworks rolled out with the updates. The middle school has piloted 3 programs as well, with the 8th grade focusing uniquely on civics and government. And then the high school has reviewed 3 programs, and they test drove all 3 of them with students at different times during the school year. Last week, I met with all of the content leaders from each school to review the faculty feedback and their draft recommendations. Next week, I'll be reaching out to specific publishing companies to work on draft contracts and a variety of quotes. And then the hope is that I will come back to you at the May school committee meeting for a formal request for an approval of a program adoptions at all 3 schools. So at that time, I'll do what I've done in the past with curriculum adoptions. I'll give a brief presentation with some information about the process and the final products that we've selected. So that's just to give you a quick commercial to let you know that even though we're working remotely and in unique circumstances, that the content leadership team has been working very hard to try to keep us moving forward when it comes to teaching and learning in our adoption cycle.
Excellent. I will go through all the members, and if you have any questions or comments, please let me know. Mr. Tenorella?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell?
Mr. Branco, all these products, they're 3 or 4 different companies that are providing the products?
Yeah, so similar to how we handled this with science and math, there are anywhere, there's between a half a dozen to a dozen major national and international publishing companies that are handling curriculum right now. So we had narrowed it down originally last year to 3, 4, or 5 at different grade levels. And then this year we got sample products from all of the different vendors. All of them are a blend of hard copy and web-based materials, similar to the science adoption and the math adoptions that we've gone through previously. So that's our hope, is that we can stay 21st century, but at the same time, particularly in history, we can give students hands-on opportunities to look at primary documents and to really be exploring the world of social science a little more deeply. So right now we've gone through all of the products, we've met with all the vendors, we've piloted all the materials, and the faculty has made a recommendation through the content leaders for me to explore further what the practicality of adopting the recommended products are. I'll put that together and then I'll come to you in May with my final proposals.
I guess my question is really, are we staying with one vendor through grades 1 through 12, or is one company better at certain grade levels than the other?
So we probably will wind up with, my guess is we're
going for consistency or quality.
Quality. So, and actually, I suppose you could answer it both ways. So we're looking for quality. We're looking for the vendor and the company that best meets the age appropriateness and aligns with the Massachusetts frameworks and standards the best. Some companies focus heavily on high school AP and high-end history and world history and U.S. history, whereas others really cater themselves to the elementary level. So right now, I already know that the recommendation is going to probably be similar to science and math, where we adopted a variety of programs at the age level. What we do is we make sure, going from 5th to 6th, and then again from 8th to 9th, that there's some continuity with our curriculum maps, and that we work vertically with the content leaders to ensure that there's transition from product A to product B as the kids leave each school.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Ms. Castucci, welcome to the meeting, by the way. You're muted.
Thank you. No comment right now.
Thank you. Mr. Moran?
No comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stanton?
No comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Branco.
Yep.
Remote learning and essential learning standards. Thank you, Dr. Branco.
That's me again. So in your drive, you have some supporting documentation. There is 2 documents related to a recent MIT study that you can take a look at that I will address tonight. You can also see the remote learning community update that you all should have received from me last evening. And you should also see Commissioner Riley's updated guidance in your drive, which is entitled Strengthening Our Remote Learning Experience. So if you take a look at the MIT information, we found that very interesting as the commissioner was coming out with his new guidelines. They did a study of all 50 states' remote learning plans and identified 16 characteristics or bullet points that were important features for the plans, and they ranked Massachusetts second out of all 50 states in their implementation and their guidance. Some of the substantial areas of agreement that they found nationally, if you look at the document, were around remote learning support. They felt that nearly all the states had recommended support from a variety of support groups and leadership groups. Equity and access across all 50 states was a really high mark for making sure that we don't move too fast, and we're looking out for all variety of learners and families. All 50 states received the waivers for their state assessments, and Massachusetts has also taken advantage of that. And the other focus was on making sure we're meeting the needs of our wide, diverse learners. So whether that's special ed learners, high achieving learners, ELL students, we want to make sure that whatever we roll forward, we've found very careful ways to differentiate our programming and our instruction to meet the needs of those students. Also, they've identified 3 recommendations in the plan to focus on equity. They've given heavy instructional guidance around what the best practices are to teach remotely. So if you've ever taken an online course or any online training, it's a much different experience. And most of the recommendations are to do as much work asynchronously as possible, so that families and students can log in when they're available, particularly because we're in a pandemic situation right now and it's difficult to force people to log in at the exact same time. So those are some of the heavy recommendations. Massachusetts has done very well. But Commissioner Riley's guidance that came out that I addressed last night in the letter that you should have received really further defines the elements and the quality of remote learning that he wants us to focus on. Two major areas. One is a prerequisite standards. So I'm meeting with the content leaders tomorrow, and what the state has done is they've identified prerequisite standards in all 4 content areas: ELA, math, science, and social studies, that they would like us to focus on between now and the end of the school year. This is a shift, if you remember, from the original rollout of the remote learning in Massachusetts, where they wanted us to kind of have a placeholder and make sure we were only rolling out work that was related to standards that we had already studied so far. Now that the governor's announced school closure for the rest of the year, the DESE and the educators in the state have realized it's really not realistic to just put a pin in it, so to speak, and not try to move forward. So with the state's guidance, they've identified these power standards, these essential standards that we need to focus on in all 4 of those areas. So I have a meeting, all-day meetings tomorrow with our content leaders. They got the guidance this weekend. They've been doing crosswalk comparisons between the standards we've already taught in Tyngsborough and what the recommended prerequisites are. So tomorrow we're going to develop that internal guiding document, and then they're going to share that with the faculty in all 4 content areas, so that our students should start to feel a shift in the district over the next 3, 4, 5 days as we move into next week. And they should feel a shift in the work. So it will be newer work. They will be introducing new standards, and we'll have to be very thoughtful in how we roll that out and how it's put together in a remote learning plan. That's really the biggest fundamental shift. The second shift in the commissioner's guidance is to continue to encourage students to move towards successful engagement in remote learning. So we were very conscious and empathetic all the way through. We will continue to be so, but we were very conscious and empathetic about the variety of entry levels that we have for families into the remote learning plan. 2 parents working, nobody working, students and families in crisis, access to technology, knowledge base when it comes to using technology. We feel like over time in the district, we've done a good job of supporting families' abilities to get to the products that they need and to access everything that they can access to be successful. So now it's time that we move forward and continue to ensure that all students, to the best of their ability, are participating in the model. So in Tyngsborough, what we've been doing was we've been monitoring our student participation as well as their work completion and the quality of their work very carefully, with online spreadsheets that the teachers are populating, and then the administrative team and the counseling team are checking on students and families to make sure that they're participating and that they're safe and things are going well in their homes. Right now, TES reports that classroom teachers, school counselors, nurses, and administrators have contacted families who have demonstrated inconsistent attendance to make sure everything's going well and to try to support them. They've shared resources with families. They've mailed resources home directly, and at times they've delivered resources to the homes when that was necessary. Based on last week's survey at the elementary school, 97% of students have been participating through the Google Meets and the Google Classroom, and the other 3% of students have been in contact with someone at the school to make sure that we understand how things are going in that home, and so that we can try to engage those students to the best of their ability moving forward. At the middle school, they've contacted every family since the beginning of the remote learning, including some reluctant learners multiple times, to just make sure that they're on board and they understand the expectations. Work completion at the middle school varies between about 70 and 90%. And that actually varies by subject area. That's something we're noticing grades 6 through 12, is that it depends on whether it's an elective or a special or a core academic. Students are probably participating in certain subjects a little more than others. So we're asking that families are kind of checking on the Google Classroom and checking on their own students' participation while teachers are reaching out to make sure that kids are actively engaged as well. And at the high school, all students and families have communicated with teachers, counselors, or administrators, and we're looking at between 85 to 88% participation in at least 3 classes or more, which is a really high percentage out of the gate. And we do anticipate at all grade levels that now that we're shifting to prerequisite standards and the feeling of more accountability and newer work, that we believe there's going to be an uptick in participation across the district as well. So we're very cautious of who's participating, to what extent they're participating, and trying to make sure that we have a good handle on that. And that the administrative team at each school checks on that at the end of every single week to make sure they have a good understanding. I'd like to acknowledge the technology team as well. We could not have implemented this the way we've implemented it without their support. They've been maintaining our infrastructure. They've been providing PD to staff. They've been providing student and parent support. And Mr. Piper has been in his car, often distributing devices out to homes where that was necessary. We've got about 115 Chromebooks out there that have been delivered to homes as of today. The majority of those devices have been delivered to elementary school families. And so what we're noticing, and if you think to when you had your own children, if you're past the elementary school age, most families haven't bought that first grader an iPhone yet, contrary to popular belief, or most families don't have a second laptop for a first or a second grader. So that's been the shift. It's not just about a need necessarily for access to technology, but it's just about my family wasn't there because of the age of my students. Whereas in my own home, I have an 8th grader and I have a 12th grader. They have their own technology and have for a little while. So we found that we've had to support the elementary families a little more when it comes to having devices for a variety of reasons. So we think the model is going well. We understand clearly that everybody's access to the technology and to the materials is going to be a little different. We also understand that there are some students and families that are ready to go 100 miles an hour through this, and that there are others who are really dealing with other things in their life that quite honestly are probably more important than checking into a math class on a Wednesday or a Thursday. So we're trying to be very empathetic to the community's needs, to where we are in society right now, but to be very responsible to the fact that we need to move our students forward. And I can assure you that the other conversations we're starting to have right now with content leaders is, what does our reentry look like? So right now we're starting to talk about how we plan remediation, how we redesign our scope and sequence, how we change our curriculum documents and our lessons and our units, so that when we return, whatever that looks like in September, every kid from our highest achieving kid to our most struggling learner will most likely not be where they would have been in September. So we need to be prepared to mitigate that and to make sure that we can help move students forward. A lot of work has been done. Very, very proud of the faculty and staff. Also very proud of the community for how they're supporting each other and supporting our ability to try to learn an entire new school infrastructure, so to speak, to do it right by our Tyngsborough kids. So that's my update. If you have thoughts or questions, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
I will go around, give everybody an opportunity. Mr. Varela?
Dr. Branco, we often tease you about the length of your things, but great job tonight. Very, very thorough. I sat in on one of my son's Google Classrooms without their knowledge on Friday. And Mr. O'Brien, Mrs. Leahy did an unbelievable job. They kept the kids engaged. It was fun. It was educational, and it really was. So from my household with an 8th grader, you get out of it what you put into it. And, as parents, we always talk about the social and emotional needs of our children, but right now there's a lot of parents out there that have social and emotional needs too, trying to work full time and be school teachers and cook 3 meals a day. And, a lot of the parents' lives have changed too. So I appreciate all the work that you and Dr. Flanagan and the whole group has done and getting this going. Also, the cooperation of our teachers who have agreed to do this is big. Thank you all for everything you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Mr. Mitchell?
Dr. Branco, thank you. Dr. Flanagan, I know all of you are working hard to try and make the best out of a bad situation. And I hope that in the long run, it is worth all your efforts. Just all I can say is try and keep it up the best you can. We're going to need to be able to handle those also. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Ms. Gastucci.
First, I just want to say thank you so much for the very detailed report you put together yesterday, Mr. Branco and Dr. Branco. And I appreciated reading both your report and also the commissioner's report and also the MIT report. So that was some really good information that I think got out to everybody and was appreciated by everybody. And I want to thank you guys also for all your hard work. It's been a tough road for you. I have no idea how tough changing everything that you've ever, the way you've ever done anything in 1 month. So I do appreciate all the hard work you put together. And thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Ms. Stanton.
I just have a question about, as we're going into change number 4 for the students, how that's planning to impact them. So, last meeting, I did bring up that we need to be cognizant of every time that we're making a change to the students. First, it was there's no school for a few days, and then it was enrichment for 2 weeks, and now it's remote learning with no new items, and now it's remote learning with new items. How is this, is this being taken into consideration, how it's being presented to the students? Because every time there's a change, you send these students for a new adventure. And some students deal with that better than others. And the teachers aren't there to see how they're dealing with that. So I just kind of want to bring that up and hear from you, Dr. Branco, about that.
Yeah, it's a great point, Ms. Stanton. I think the biggest shift that we felt was reported from kids and families was when we went from resources to the remote learning a month back, because that it went from guiding resources that sort of weren't connected and you could choose from a menu of options, back to our best attempt at real school. And it wasn't that we weren't assigning up until Monday, it wasn't that we weren't assigning new work, we just weren't moving forward with standards, but it still felt like schoolwork. So I don't anticipate kids are going to feel a massive shift over the next couple of days, with the exception that they'll see material in some cases for the first time that they haven't seen. So it's going to be incumbent upon teachers, and this is the bulk of my meetings tomorrow, it's going to be incumbent upon teachers to be carefully designing the instruction so that it's done asynchronously, it's done a little through video, it's done a little through really good guiding, supporting materials. And so that's a unique thing for teachers to go through as well as kids. We're used to presenting new material face-to-face where we can be right there. So we need to make sure that our introduction of new materials in the virtual world, particularly when you do it asynchronously, is done carefully. And the younger the students get, the more careful and sensitive we have to be. So it's not lost on us. I think we're feeling it along with families and kids, the difficulty in teaching, and we don't react in real time to student needs. When you're in the classroom, you can tap a desk to get attention. You can go over and sit with Johnny or Susie right away. You can call 4 kids over and fix something immediately. There's an immediacy to the teaching and to the to meeting the needs of learners when they're struggling, or to pushing kids ahead when they've gone past what the expectations were. So what we've struggled with the most in this model is there's no immediacy to that. And there's a little bit of a delay in how you respond to kids. So your points are right on. We need to be very cautious of how it feels at home for students particularly. My hope is it shouldn't feel that different from what they've been going through, with the exception of new work. So I would suspect younger students might find a little more difficulty than the older kids, simply because they're used to having the teacher right there.
Sure. And that's helpful. And I appreciate you taking those into consideration. There's so many factors that you all have to take into consideration as you're, going into this uncharted territory. So thank you for that. And thank you to the teachers as well. We had some preschool meetings this morning, which went better than last time. So even the youngest of the students are learning how to have those conversations over camera. And, you know, every one of these teachers are working so hard. So thank you to all of them.
I just want to echo everybody's thoughts and, you know, thank you, Dr. Branco, Dr. Flanagan, all the content leaders, you know, Mr. Piper, just especially the teachers and the families, everybody involved. Clearly, this is unprecedented territory. We've never been through anything like this. And the response from the town, from the state, I think it's been great. We're reacting as quickly as we can. When you guys get new guidelines from the state, within a day, you're reacting and you're changing the model. And I think the MIT study shows it's working. What we're doing is working. So just, you know, as a parent, as a school committee member, you know, thank you for all the hard work. It's really appreciated.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, extended school closure. Dr. Flanagan.
So just to, thank you, just to provide the committee with kind of an update and kind of a tick list of things that we need to wrap our head around and think about as we move forward here. One of the biggest things that's keeping Mr. Messina up at night is fees and vendors and those contracts that we have with existing companies. Just to rattle off a few, you know, we need to look at what the numbers come in for user fees, parking fees. Do we talk about a rebate there? What does preschool tuition look like? What do class dues look like? Theater fees, all these fees that we have that we count on as a revenue for our budget, we need to cumulatively put that together and see what kind of impact that'll have on our budget for this year, and come up with a plan that makes families whole and recognizes that, you know, if I paid for lacrosse this spring and we didn't get it, I should either get a refund or a credit to next year. Joe and I are talking about that right now. We're having conversations about how do we even track a credit in our UniPay system? Is it possible? So these are conversations we're having, but at some point, probably the next meeting, we're going to bring to you some type of plan and recommendation that says how we address these fees. In terms of the vendors, as you know, we've had preliminary contacts with D-Bus. Clearly, we're not getting kids to and from school on a daily basis since March 13th through the end of the school year. So what does that look like in terms of our overall bus contract? What kind of refund, rebate, or partial payment are we going to make? That conversation started. Ironically, earlier today, Joe received another email about Vanpool, which is our special education van service. So that's another vendor, another transportation component that we need to think about strategically and what that looks like moving forward as well. So a lot of these, now that we know we're not coming back, a lot of these conversations have shifted from what if to this is the reality and what's our plan going to be. So working closely with Joe, we'll craft a plan that we'll bring back to this committee for recommendation to either go with and execute or modify based on your recommendations. So that's one bucket that we're talking about. The other bucket that we're talking about is we know we're close to the end of the year, and we know that the end of the year is not going to look like it has in the past. And that's difficult. And that's difficult for kids. That's difficult for families. I saw that, you know, I had the opportunity the other day to drive around the community and drop off signs for some of the senior girl lacrosse players. My daughter's a junior on the team. And, you know, just to see the emotion in the parents' eyes and the kids' eyes, they're struggling with this. They're dealing with this right now, and it's hard. So we know that moving forward, it's going to be different. I know that Mr. Ogden plans this week to communicate to the class of 2020. Mr. Ogden is looking at an alternative graduation date some point in July. Our hope is now that the closure was extended by 2 weeks today from the governor, we're hoping that at some point in July we can assemble or congregate or come together differently. But he'll be working with the Tyngsborough Police, Tyngsborough Fire, as well as the Tyngsborough Board of Health to see how we can personalize a ceremony for these kids as best as possible. And he'll come up with plans if we need to recognize them down the road at some other point in a different manner or a different venue or a different luncheon or something, in addition to a graduation. he'll do that as well. So he's working with the kids, and he's going to find out what the best plan is. But I would anticipate families hearing this week from the high school that graduation will be postponed till a point in July. Additionally, I had a conversation with both Kerry Kavanaugh and Chris Pollitt, and they want to recognize their students as well. So they're developing plans right now to recognize the fifth graders who will be moving on, as well as the eighth graders who will be moving on. Again, they will coordinate with Tyngsborough Police and Tyngsborough Fire to make sure that we are in full compliance with what we can and can't do at this time. But I think those conversations will come to parents. My hope is by the end of this week, parents have a better sense of what's going to happen in all buildings regarding end of the year celebrations. There are certain traditional things, rites of passage, that may not be able to happen. It's grossly unfortunate. It is. But we can only do what we can do. So this school closure certainly has impacted how we work operationally and financially with our vendors, how it impacts the kids. And the other conversation we're starting to have right now is, what does school year 2021 look like? Mr. Pollitt called me yesterday and said, I need to really start thinking about Camp Borndale for September and what that looks like, and when the money's due on that. So we have that conversation. So we really need to be careful and strategic about how we approach this and be as inclusive as possible as we can moving forward. Additionally, as you heard Dr. Branco, we're going to spend the last half of this summer developing plans to gap fill. At least now we know what the essential learning standards are. We know all kids will be, and we'll have some kind of pre-assessment at the beginning of the year to see how well they've done, how far they've gone, and where we need to target kids to make sure that we can close the gap as best we can. So we're doing all those things, all those conversations are happening right now. But to pull together a plan in 2 or 3 days, A, isn't smart because you're going to have holes in it, and B, I think we need to be as thoughtful and reflective as we can and see how things develop over the next couple of weeks. So I guess I'm saying stay tuned for a better plan about fees and vendors, and Mr. Ogden and Ms. Kavanaugh and Mr. Pollitt will communicate directly with their school community as the building leader to make determinations about ceremonies and celebrations moving forward. So that's where we are in terms of an extended school closure. Happy to answer any questions.
I will go around for questions. Mr. Tenorella?
Dr. Flanagan, could you touch on scholarships and how those would be given out to our seniors?
Yeah, so I think that's going to be contingent upon what we can do for July. Right now, so at the end of the year, what a lot of people don't know is when we have graduation practice first of all, we have multiple celebrations. We have a scholarship night. We have an academic excellence breakfast. We also have a celebration of learning at the elementary school. We have an academic achievement awards at the high school and middle school. So all those celebrations are kind of in flux right now. What we need to figure out is what we can do to get kids on campus. If we can do some kind of graduation ceremony, historically what we end up doing during that week of practice is give kids their CUNY folders, their yearbooks, and all that type of stuff in the last week. That may have to be one-stop shopping. Again, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. Mr. Ogden is working on that, but all those things are coming under consideration right now.
All right, thank you. And I'd also like to ask all those who give scholarships to continue to do it. Our students probably need them more this year than ever. So
to that point, absolutely. Yeah, the kids aren't going to miss out on anything. What they get may happen in a different manner. I guess that's how I'm saying it. We're not going to not give scholarships because of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell?
No comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Costucci? You're muted, Julie.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, everything's in some manner planned on going forward. I think that's really important. And I understand that at this point, there's no way you can, anticipate exactly how it's going to be done. But I'm glad that there's, some kind of, idea of a date for graduation and then trying to figure out exactly what we can do with what's given to us.
And I think that's the biggest thing. I probably should emphasize that. I think Mr. Ogden wants to develop one date. This will be the date, and it will look like A or look like B. We don't know exactly, but this is going to be the date. And we're going to push it up to hopefully be able to assemble in some manner.
And I think that's important for the seniors and their families to have something to look forward to have hope, you know?
Yeah.
It's tough. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Mr. Moran.
No further comments tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stanton.
No further comments, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Flanagan. Finance, Mr. Messina.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For signing of bills, last week, Mr. Mullen came in as your single signer and signed 7 bill warrants. I believe Dr. Branco is bringing them up on his screen right now. They are in your drive, the warrant numbers, the accounts, and the amounts. For signing of payroll, there were 2 payrolls in April that are listed in your drive as well, with the payroll dates, the warrant numbers, and amounts for those as well. Also, we have the March financial package, your standard 3 reports, the school committee budget as of the end of March, the school committee revolving account balances at the end of March, as well as the end of March student activity account listing. And I'll leave enrollment for the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Messina. At the elementary school, we had 813 students. The middle school had 388. The high school had 453. And there were district students for a total of 1,675 students as of April 1st, 2020. So anything for other, Mr. Messina?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on to school committee discussion, our next meeting would be next week. I don't think it makes sense to have a meeting next week. I think we should hold off on scheduling a meeting until the Board of Selectmen hears some more from the state as far as what the numbers were for the month of April. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments on that? I'll go around. Mr. Tenorella?
No, I agree.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell?
I would just suggest that the administration feels that there's something that we need to be aware of, that we try and schedule a meeting if needed. And, you know, if there's something with everything changing so quickly, if there's something that may need to be done, we have a 2-day notice to post a meeting and have one. That's my only suggestion.
Absolutely.
Comment on that?
Go ahead, Dr. Flanagan.
I think that's a great idea, particularly in light of, you know, as we're working with some of our vendors and stuff, if we need to come together as a committee to talk about where we are for settling the contracts or negotiations, that would be helpful. So if that does come up, I will certainly make the committee aware. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Costucci? You muted, Julie.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moran?
Have a good night and be safe, everybody.
Thank you. Ms. Stanton?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Okay. So now we will have school committee discussion. Mr. Tenorella?
No, I just want to thank Dr. Flanagan, Dr. Branco, Mr. Messina, and the staff for the hours of work that you guys are putting in. And I talk to you guys a lot, so I know what you're going through. So thank you very much for everything you're doing for our kids.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell?
I'd just like to say that it's a difficult time and everybody is working and thinking outside the box. I know there's a lot of things that aren't getting done and a lot of things that are getting done in a different way. $5 million that we're going to be expending between now and the end of the year. I just want to make sure that the value of that is as much as possible. And if there's an idea or something by thinking outside the box, it can help get the students some of the things they're missing. I encourage the administration to look for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Ms. Costucci.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moran.
Again, all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hatton.
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fairbanks.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Messina.
I'm all set tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Branco.
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Flanagan.
Just a thank you to Joe for the budget. Did a great job with that as always. Thanks to Mark, done an incredible job with the remote learning plan. Our principals are doing a great job leading the district, but the boots on the ground, the teachers and paraprofessionals do an incredible job. They really are. They're working very hard, and they had to pivot their entire career, in a matter of weeks. And they've done yeoman's work, and just so proud of their efforts. So thanks to the entire Tyngsborough Teachers Association.
Thank you. And I'd like to echo those thoughts once again. Thank you, Dr. Flanagan and Dr. Branco, Derek, Joe, all the staff, all the teachers.
Did Ryan freeze? That's a problem. So, Mr. Vice Chair, you want to finish the meeting?
Well, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Can I make that motion?
Motion by Mike, second by
A
Paul.
second?
There you go, Julie.
In favor.
In favor.
Ryan's still
Mr.
frozen.
Mitchell. Well, I'll have to go through the roll call. Hold on, Mr. Mitchell,
In favor.
Mr. Costucci,
In favor.
Mr. Moran,
In favor.
Ms. Stanton.
In favor.
I believe we're done. That carries 5-0-0. Have a good night, everyone. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night.
you.